Last year we've talked about this. We'll talk about it every year it happens. There is this women's march, which I want to point out, number one, is not a women's march. It is a march in favor of radical leftist positions, which some women and men believe in, and which many women do not. But the women's march made the news this week because they finally got rid of Linda Sarsour, a board member of the women's march, stridently, openly anti-Semitic. She is Muslim. She's a Muslim American activist. She supports the BDS movement, which is pretty much the destruction, the starvation of Israel's economy. She is a strident supporter of Sharia. So Linda Sarsour finally out, as I mentioned at the close of yesterday's show, she's found a new gig working for Bernie Sanders. The Democrat presidential candidate, who's himself Jewish, hired Linda Sarsour, who is stridently anti-Semitic, to be an advisor. It just is a really good window on left-wing thought. All left-wing thought wraps into a little ball of simply hatred of America, hatred of what is good. But the Women's March, having to replace Linda Sarsour and having received heavy criticism for having a board member who is stridently anti-Semitic, hates Israel. They replaced her. It's almost unbelievable to imagine, but they replaced her with someone even worse. Replaced her with anti-American Islamist Zahra Billoo, Zahra Billo. She is going to replace Linda Sarsour on the board of the Women's March. A few little gems about this woman. If you thought that the Women's March is trying to move away from anti-Semitism, not so fast. Number one, she loves to tweet out and makes a big news splash every Memorial Day about the idea that she really can't think of anything great to say about America's soldiers. I mean, she's anti-American. These are not confusing things to figure out. She said she tweets between struggles of Memorial Day and whether it's right to honor American soldiers who died in wars. She calls our American military occupiers and murderers. She also made a huge issue of wanting to honor black liberation soldiers like the Black Panthers. You know, the terrorist organization that was trying to prevent people from voting, that group. She also, though, it's really interesting, I mean, talk about a real core, down to the wire issue of whether you support America or not. She's been very critical of the Constitution of the United States because, says she, in its main essence, her words, in its main essence, it is diametrically opposed to what Allah has commanded. The Women's March does not stand for women. Put the other way, millions of American women, in fact, I would venture to guess most American women, do not ally themselves with a radical Islamist mission of destruction of our Constitution, hatred of Israel, destruction of Israel. Yet the Women's March, after having months of controversy and criticism over their inclusion of Linda Sarsour, who is, by the way, stridently supportive of Sharia, understands Sharia, includes FGM, all sorts of horrific treatment for women. I mean, the irony, the Women's March claiming they stand for women and women's equality, all their political goals are radically left-wing socialist/communist missions. But even at the core, the idea they say they stand for women, and they had Linda Sarsour on their board, someone who supports the unbelievably horrible way in which women are treated under Islamic law, Sharia. But they finally had to get rid of her because great public pressure and brought in someone, I mean, it's truly probably hard to find someone even more anti-American, more anti-Semitic, more hateful of America and even our Constitution. Folks, in closing, as first five, this woman does not stand for American women, and this is not the Women's March. This is the radical leftist march of America, and you ought to speak up and tell your friends it has nothing to do with representing the views of women. And that, my friends, is today's First Five.